Hello there, studio teacher friends. This is Christina Whitlock, your host and anytime piano teacher friend, here to welcome you to another episode of the Beyond Measure podcast. This is a listener-supported show, thanks to the very generous support of my Patreon community. For more information on how you can help keep the lights on over here at Beyond Measure, please visit ChristinaWhitlock.com/support. Thanks in advance for showing my show some love. Now, let's get on with it. This is episode 144. Cheers to prioritizing lasting value. I'm going to be straight with you. I have a bit of an obsession with the concept of lasting value. Anytime that I am faced with a decision, I try to remind myself to focus on that which will last. Now, of course, this holds all kinds of implications throughout my life, but we'll stay focused on all things teacher life here today. So, in my teaching, what lasts? Well, the main answer that I always come up with is that feelings last. That's why we have to be ever cognizant of helping our students recognize when they are experiencing feelings of accomplishment or pride or overcoming struggle. I try really hard to make sure that my students feel capable in their lessons, and then to make sure that they are recognizing that feeling of competence. I make it a point often to circle back and point out, like, hey, you know that feeling of accomplishment that you're experiencing right now? I want you to remember this. Or like, hey, you know how difficult this passage seemed just 5 minutes ago? I want you to remember that solutions are often only a few minutes away, and all that stands between the two is a little bit of work. Taking time to point out our students' feelings as they experience them not only helps them recognize their accomplishments, but it also helps them know that you are seeing them for the human beings they are, and you're noticing the things that they are experiencing. It's often reported that students don't remember what they learn in class all the time, but they very distinctly remember how they felt in that class. You've probably heard that before, right? That's why I try to be so aware of the emotions that go on during a lesson, in addition to the content that I'm delivering, of course. But this principle of lasting value, it applies to far more in our professional world than just the actual lesson itself. So let's take a moment and take a look in the mirror and consider this idea of lasting value. So let's consider our investments in our studios and even in our own education. When it comes to purchasing new music or new materials, new technology, new subscriptions, new manipulatives, you get the idea, when it comes to pretty much any of our business expenses, I want you to ask yourself, are you investing in things that have lasting value? I know that this past summer, during the summer bookshelf tour I hosted here on the podcast, I've already talked about my great love for Robert Duke's book, Intelligent Music Teaching. In that episode, I mentioned that zinger of a quote that he has in the preface that basically says that if you come out of an experience with nothing more than a new activity for Monday, then you have failed to learn anything of lasting value. That's episode 130 if you're more interested in that particular book. But anyway, I just have to say that as music teachers, we can be so guilty of settling for the quick fix. We think that new book or the new tool or the new technology is going to be exactly the thing that saves us. And don't get me wrong, the things like this that we buy can add to a rich experience for our students and for ourselves. But we also know that sometimes they just end up gathering dust. My new question when it comes to purchasing studio resources is this: does the resource provide lasting value? Let me explain what I mean. Here's one example that will hit us all right between the eyes. No one loves the piano repertoire more than me. Hear me on this. Buying and exploring new supplemental repertoire books is like 100% one of my favorite things here on planet Earth. I think that I've made that abundantly clear over the last few years. But here's the thing. One amazing book is not going to fix the problem of a student who doesn't seem to love playing their instrument. It's a Band-Aid. It might get you through a few weeks. Choose wisely, and it might even show your student how much fun they can have playing. That's a great thing. But there's another side to this that many of us have experienced. When students fall head over heels in love with one particular piece or one particular book, it can be so hard to get them to fall in love with anything else, right? Nothing will compare once that piece gets hoisted up on the student's pedestal. The solution with lasting value here is to make sure that your student loves playing their instrument, that they find joy and excitement and beauty in playing lots of different music and lots of different styles, that they find intrigue in the challenge and the celebration of the abilities that they hold right now in this very moment. So, sure, choosing repertoire that inspires your students and that fits them well, it's really important. It's something I am incredibly passionate about, and it makes our job infinitely more enjoyable and more interesting. But there's this notion out there called student saver pieces, like these pieces that are going to save your students from wanting to quit. Well, I think it's a great idea, but I also happen to think it's a little misguided. I think the lesson of lasting value here is learning the bigger picture, the harder work of trying to figure out how exactly to introduce pieces to our students in a way that is going to make them excited to play them. I equate it to sales. I think of it like, how can I sell this piece to this student? How can I fuel their motivation to explore and create and conquer? What about your choice of method series? If you are less than impressed with the sight reading skills of your students, oftentimes our first thought is to jump ship to a different method series. Now, depending on the student and the series you happen to be using, that could very much be a step in the right direction. But the solution here with real, lasting value is to do the harder work and stop depending on a method series to teach your students to read. The solution is to study the research, to use your own experience, and to teach your students to read using what you know to be true. I know we just talked about the limitations of method series 2 weeks ago, and I'm just so determined to empower listeners of this podcast to think beyond their method series. Jump back and listen to episode 142 if you missed that one, okay? Let's talk for a second about technology, shall we? When it comes to buying apps or subscriptions or software, what is going to provide you lasting value? Here's a really important thing to remember about technology, okay? Are you listening? There was a time when it felt somewhat impressive for music teachers to use apps and other technology in their studios. But times have changed. Tech does not impress students and families like it once did. I mean, we're all surrounded by technology 24/7. If you have tech in your studio that serves a clear purpose, then great. But if you think that you need to download an app just because it's interesting technology or because you think it's going to help you look more like with it in the 21st century, well, it's not worth it. Our technology needs to provide us lasting value. Otherwise, just what's the point? Friends, none of us in this profession feel like we have financial resources to waste. Let's just be honest. Therefore, it's really important that we guard ourselves from shiny object syndrome, or maybe better said, the quick fix syndrome. Just do me a favor and consider this a friendly reminder that there are very few quick fixes in musician world. I mean, teachers have been at this gig for a very long time, and because there truly is nothing new under the sun, if there was an easy solution to any of our big teacher problems, it would have been discovered long ago. So, are there tools that will make the quality of our teacher lives better and more valuable? Absolutely. But those tools are most likely the ones that are adding lasting value to our studio lives. And that, plain and simple, is what I hope I've inspired you today to seek out. All right, it's time to find a glass and get it up in the air because I'm ready to toast. Studio music teacher friends from all around the world, the next time you are considering a purchase or making a decision about a student or a lesson plan, a policy change, a difficult conversation you need to have, whatever it might be, I want you to consider what is going to last. 1 year from today or 5 years from today, what will you still be using? What will matter about how you made someone feel today? That is the stuff that teacher magic is made of, friends. So let's make the most of it, okay? Hear, hear. Thanks for joining me for episode 144, friends. I hope that I have inspired you to consider more of what brings lasting value to your life and to those families' lives who you work with. I know, it's my obsession with legacy bubbling up and out of me again. Consider this your reminder that your influence causes ripple effects through your studio family's lives that you are never going to know about. It's really a huge responsibility, but also a tremendous honor. And with that, I tell you, onward and upward, teacher friends. Let's get out there and contribute work of lasting value.